All right, everybody, here we go. Season 2, Episode 2, FranchisOR Bust. Could not be more excited because Katie and I, we only get the cream of the crop. This is it, folks. If you want to learn about everything having to do with the franchise world, you come here and you get to know one of the best people that we can have on the show, period. And that is Ford Saeks. For heaven's sakes, as he says, Ford Saeks is joining us for Prime Concepts. Ford, how are you?
Well, I'm doing great. And welcome to the show. I like anything having to do with franchising. Franchisees are my people, and I work with franchise brands as well as franchisees and vendors in the industry. So I'm really excited about the show. And just for those listeners or people watching, this is not scripted. So I have no idea what he's going to say. So if you love the episode, thank him. If you don't like the episode, well, then you can complain to me.
No. Listen, I take all the credit and I take all the blame, except for if it's something that Katie did, in which case we blame Katie.
Yeah, okay. No. I don't bite the hand that feeds me. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad we're here. Take it wherever you want to go for you and your listeners.
Fantastic. Well, a lot of the things that we like to touch on here, we really like to understand and get perspective on, is helping people really know what the benefits, what the things they should understand about franchising before they ever even step foot in the door. Because a lot of times the folks who are listening may say, well, I'm in the franchise space, I'm a franchisor. But oftentimes too, we got folks who think, well, what do I need to worry about when I get in? What am I getting myself prepared for? So why don't we start there? Let's talk about a new person looking at the world of franchising, saying, I've always wanted to own my own business. What does that look like? What should they be prepared for in terms of what it means to get into a franchise brand, and maybe what some of the things they should be looking out for as they, evaluate the choices they might have?
All right. So we're going to target this towards those new entrepreneurs or those wannabe entrepreneurs that maybe worked in a corporate job, or maybe they had a small business, but now they're looking at something that they can scale. So in the franchise world, there's so many different choices of different businesses, B2B, business to business, and business to consumer. So it really just depends. But the first thing is, what are your outcomes? I would want everybody to start with, what do you want? What do you want? What are your goals for your franchise? Because there's so many different types of franchises and different levels of investment that you really need to start with a clear vision of what you're trying to do and what's lifestyle friendly. Some people in franchising, as franchisees, think that they bought a minimum wage job. They buy a business, they open it up, and they're working, 80 hours a week, and they're struggling and they're frustrated. And then there are people who start with their first franchise, they're really successful, and then they grow it to multi-units or multi-brands and multi-units. So back to your original question, what should they do? You should first really understand that whatever franchise organization that you participate in or brand, we're going to call that the ZOR, FranchisOR, like the brand, whatever program or opportunity you buy into, the advantage of franchising is huge because they've already cracked the code on what works. They've already gone through all the development of the good products. So I would say that the reason you get into franchising is so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and you've got a national brand and credibility behind you. Now, at the same time, you're still absolutely responsible for your local area marketing and your local area leadership. So in business, there's 3 buckets that you have to be successful in, whether you're a franchisee or not. And a franchisee, by the way, if you're not used to it, that's the person who owns the franchise. So because the nature of the franchise business, and for those listeners, this is for educational and informational purposes only, we are not giving you legal advice. Please seek the competent legal professional. Okay, so that's my disclaimer, just in case someone takes what we've heard on this show and decides they're going to run with it, which I hope they do, but just use your due diligence. If you're going to go into business, in a franchise or in any business, you've got to understand there's 3 buckets. There's the operational bucket. You have to be skilled at leadership and management and being able to deliver the product or service, deliver the training and leadership. The second bucket is the product or service. And the third bucket is marketing and sales. So you have operations, delivering the product or service, the practitioner, right? And then being able to sell it and market it. Well, very rarely, Trevor, are people good at all 3. So like in me, I've had 17 different businesses. I've written multiple books. I've worked in franchising for 34 years. I work with top franchise brands. I work with multi-unit franchisees. I've written books on the subject. And I do 4 things. I help people build their influence, build their subscribers, get leads, and get sales. So I, as a franchisee, look at businesses that are low labor, less investment to get into, that I can hire a manager to run. So that's one model, but I'm not using it as my primary source of income. Otherwise, I might look at an investment that would be more than $100,000. So there's different levels. You can get into a franchise for $25,000, or you can get into one for $2.5 million. So to summarize and give you the mic back so I don't talk too long, I would just say this. You need to really understand, why are you doing it? What's lifestyle friendly? Are you going to run it? Are you going to hire people to run it? Are you going to, start small, figure it out, the kinks, and get complicated later? But the reason I brought up those 3 buckets is, as you're listening to this or watching this live, you're not good at all 3, and you're going to want to hire your weaknesses. Don't try to do everything yourself, or you'll fail.
That's an excellent point. I think something I really like that you mentioned is the dynamic between franchisee, franchisor. So
yep,
you're kind of, franchisee is kind of like entrepreneur light. You're not just starting from scratch. You're taking your capital investment and you're putting into something that theoretically should work. And so then you go into the principality of it, like you mentioned, operating inside of your buckets, beginning the execution part, and succeeding. Let's talk a little bit about just the dynamic then between the franchisor and the franchisee. Sometimes that can often contribute to success or failure of a franchisee in particular. What type of dynamics do you think, or have you seen, work best between a franchisor and a franchisee? And then what dynamics have you seen maybe not be as optimal and can maybe hamper the franchisee's ability to succeed as they're interacting with the franchisor?
Certainly. So we'll coin this section, or this chapter of our interview today, franchise relations. And
chapter 2 of Ford's next book.
Yeah, chapter 2. Well, actually, the book, for those of you that are interested in new in franchising, you can check it out. It's called Accelerate, an ultimate guide for franchisees to maximize local marketing and boost sales. So there's my shameless plug for being on the show. But
Perfect.
Let's talk about franchise relationships, which actually is section 1 of my book. The biggest challenge in franchising is this. Franchisors, the corporation, wants their franchisees to follow their systems and to use the tools and things that they have created. The franchisee who purchased the franchise wants the franchisor to send them all the business. They think, look, I bought this franchise. I set it up. I'm in a brick and mortar or a service business. I've got my van or my food truck or whatever it is. And why isn't the phone ringing? Why aren't more customers beating down a path to come to my door? So those relationships between the franchisor and the franchisee are challenged. But what I would tell you is, even if you do your research, every franchise brand that I've worked with, and I've worked with hundreds of them, you can find a few disgruntled franchisees that just say it's the Antichrist, it's the worst company in the world, and their policies are terrible, and their products are terrible, and their commissions are terrible, and they have to pay too much royalties, and blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to find people that are thriving. So just do your due diligence. Don't just listen to one person. One does not make a majority, and even a few doesn't make a majority. You can find heroes and zeros in every organization. So back to your whole point about the franchise relationships, the franchise brands that do the best have a franchise advisory committee, have open communication with their franchisees, communicate to their franchisees, and really do care. And I work with a lot of the CEOs from a lot of them, and they really do care. I mean, they started out as a small business, they turned it into a franchise, or they purchased the franchise after it reached a certain level of success, and they really do care about their franchisees. Unfortunately, as much as a franchisor, the brand, tries to vet the franchisee, sometimes people end up buying a franchise. They're not prepared to run it. They're not prepared to work. They're not willing to do what it takes. And then they fail. But instead of taking personal accountability for their own failure or success, they blame the franchisor. And so one of the reasons that I wrote that book, Accelerate, was to be a byproduct that a franchise brand could give to all their franchisees, so that they understood that they're responsible and accountable, and that they actually have how to sell, how to market, how to lead, how to manage, how to find, attract, and retain top talent, how to motivate millennials, because a lot of the times franchises have younger staff. Millennials now aren't even the younger staff anymore. It's Gen A and Gen B, and we could go through that all day. But running a business is challenging, and the advantages of being in a franchise, again, are they giving you systems? Now, do they give you everything? No. That's why I wrote the book, and that's why there's people like me that do podcasts and interviews as experts in the industry to help bridge that gap. Because most franchise brands are really good with their products and services, and they know how to sell the products and services, but they don't necessarily know how to do it from the local level. And that's why the franchisee is so important. They have to network. They have to hire. They have to lead, manage, create their culture, and implement and hold people accountable. And that's not something the franchisor can do. So franchise relationships is super important, but it's different for every brand.
You brought up several interesting things there that could not ring more true to me, as I've obviously have a working knowledge of the franchise space as well. And one of those in particular was the idea and the reinforced idea that you mentioned that at the local level, that franchisee really does have to be accountable to take the engine they've been given and then make it actually run and go down the path, because it's easy. It's the easy way out to say, well, I spent all this time, I vetted them, I went through all this information, I chose this on my own, but now I'm still going to blame my choice for not working, as opposed to saying, maybe I need to look inward. What are some tactical things at the kind of the local franchisee level that they need to pay most attention to outside? And you mentioned sales and marketing, and there are three buckets, but maybe even a little deeper into that. How important is it to establish that culture, have accountability for your managers, your staff, really treat, even if you just have that one location, obviously most of the times you want to grow and you want to keep going, but just that one that you kick off with, how important is it, I guess kind of in the daily management of the staff, daily management of the operation, that the franchisor is not really driving?
Yeah. First thing you would do is you'd make a list of all the different roles you need in your franchise. What are the roles? Do I need a manager? Do I need a frontline staff? Do I need a prep? Or do I need a tactician to deliver the service? It depends on the business, right? So first, identify all the roles. Second, identify all the specific traits and responsibilities for each of those roles. So what are they? I mean, have you actually sat down and thought them through? Number three, what does success look like? So how are you going to measure success? If you can't hit a target if you don't know. And a lot of people, when they have a business, they don't even think about this stuff. The franchisor doesn't necessarily train them, because again, there are certain laws and regulations to what a franchisor can tell a franchisee to do. Otherwise, they're an employee. So we're not going to get into that area, but just understand that the very nature of franchising has to be franchising. It can't be where the franchise or the brand is responsible for everything. Otherwise, it's an employee. It's not really an independent business. Okay, so one, get all your responsibilities, roles and responsibilities. What does success look like? And then you start there. The next thing you want to do is you want to identify what are you going to do for marketing. So where are you going to get your customers? Now, this depends on if you are a service type business that goes into homes, or whether you have a retail location that people come to you. But you want to pay attention to the marketing and sales playbook that your franchisor has given you, if they've given you one, and some have given you, better ones, and some are not so good. So just understand that. But then it's your responsibility. So you need to participate in identifying your strengths and weaknesses. Where are the gaps in your mindset, strategies, and tactics? And then seek out those competent experts that can help bridge that gap and invest in them, because that's going to be the fastest way to grow. But tactically, in your community, you've got to be clear on who your ideal customer is. Where do they congregate? Who else reaches them? What other vendors in your city or retail or wholesale companies reach the same target prospect? What could you do to create a referral culture? What are you going to do to get seen? What are you going to do to create awareness? What are you going to do to create interest in what you do? So the buckets are still the three buckets. I mean, you got the operational bucket, which is your labor, which is one of your biggest expenses. You've got the delivery of the product or service. You've got supply chain issues and cost issues and competition. So there's all different things around delivering and selling the actual product. And then you have to market. And marketing is broken down into two categories. You have traditional, which is before the internet, and then you have digital. And so, at the end of the day, there's only three ways to drive traffic. We're still in the marketing bucket for a second. So we got the marketing and sales, umbrella, and then you've got traditional and digital. And then from there, you've got free and paid. There's free ways to do it, and there's paid ways to do it. And so you have to look at those dynamics, right? Now, I know it's a lot to take in, and I know I talk fast. Make sure you bookmark, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to the podcast, re-listen to it again. But in short, common sense. The purpose of marketing is the response it elicits. The purpose of sales is the response it elicits. If you're not getting the leads and the interest, you're not communicating. So tactically, what do you do on a Wednesday morning at 9 a.m.? Well, did you block time out on your calendar? Did you make your calls? I know for me as a business, I have a stack of chips that sit, it's probably not going to focus because of the way my camera, there we go. I have a stack of chips. And these 10 chips represent 10 phone calls that I make every single day. So every single day, I move them from one side of my desk to the other side of the desk. And now they're all over the floor, but too bad. So
you're giving me PTSD from my gambling.
Yeah. So I look at these chips, and if they're on the left side of my channel, so those 10 touches are going to be, did I outreach? Did I send a thank you card? Did I connect with someone on LinkedIn? Did I send a packet? Did I mail something? Did I send a book out? Did I call someone to be interviewed on their podcast? Did I call someone to interview on my podcast? Am I doing the things I need to be doing? And unfortunately, most people in business, unfortunately, I say this because of my decades in the industry, they're delusional about how much they get done. They're delusional about how long things take. They overestimate how long it takes to do something. They underestimate how long it takes to do something. They overestimate how much time they spent. Sorry. And, what does this really mean? Stop BSing yourself. And that's for belief system, for those of you listening. And realize, hire your weaknesses. So for me, I'm really strong in sales and marketing. But I've had to, over the years, get better at leadership and culture. Otherwise, I was losing good people. And I was complaining to my mastermind, I can't find good people, and they're just entitled and blah, blah, blah. And I was complaining. And then one of my mastermind buddies, who's a billionaire, said to me, hey, who's always at the scene of the crime? What's the one common denominator that's here? It's you. He said, you have to change your culture. You have to change your leadership. And I'm like, culture, leadership, I'm paying them. Why won't they just do what the heck I'm telling them to do? Now, obviously, that's a little exaggerated, but that is really how I used to think 20 years ago. So even though leadership and management is not my ideal, like I just live there and I just love it and I read everything on it. Oh, I read a lot on it, believe me, and I present on it. I am really excited when I can take someone's value or a business's value and connect it to an ideal prospect. So I'm one of the best, or really great, or at least I'm told, at doing that, which makes me a great business growth accelerator strategically in marketing. But I have to hire good managers. I have to hire good project managers. So when I sell a project, I have an agency. When I sell the project, the agency has to produce it. Well, I need integrators, people that are actually going to do the work. So I know that's a long road to a tiny house. But what I would say is, if you're considering going into business, you need to take inventory. You need to find out where your gaps are. And then ultimately, and this is for everything in life, you are all responsible, including me, for our actions and our inactions, our performance and our results. If you don't have the type of business you want, if you don't have the type of customers you want, if you don't have the type of freedom and money freedom and time freedom you want, it comes down to the decisions you've made or failed to make. Now, I'm saying this just as much to me as I'm saying it to the audience, because I have sold hundreds of millions of dollars of products and services, hundreds of millions. I didn't manage my money for crap. So, and because I can make good money really quickly, I never saved as much. Now, I'm not saying you should do this, everybody. I'm saying learn from my mistakes. If I would have saved 10% the way they teach you, save 10% of everything you make and tithe 10% and, the richest man in Babylon philosophies, I'd be living in an island in Fiji somewhere. But I'm a classic entrepreneur. I'm a visionary. I see opportunity everywhere. And so that's me. That doesn't mean you should, do everything I do. but you have to know what your strengths are, and then just don't try to make all your strengths strong. Hire them.
The fundamentals of the organization and accountability that you're talking about is a must, certainly. And I think for anyone getting into the franchise space, adopting those principles, their success rate would be vastly superior to those who don't take those concepts seriously. So we certainly appreciate that. Let's spend a few minutes. Talking about more, kind of more on the franchisor side, and I've always thought that with franchise brands, you've got that emerging phase now.
Yes.
And the struggles that come with the emerging phase. Different people have different thoughts about when that phase ends. And I know that for an emerging brand, an emerging franchise brand, one of the most difficult components they have is they have these lofty dreams. They have a great vision. They have a good product. They have what they want, but they want to be at 500 locations before they even get to 5. And the decisions they make can sometimes hamper just that early stage of growth. Talk a little bit about the keys for, the franchisor as they want to get from being an emerging brand and how they can develop from emerging brand. And even at the beginning, be thinking and acting and producing like a brand that is going to scale and is going to get to the dreams that they're looking for in the most effective way possible.
Well, I think it's really important to have a long-term vision, a short-term vision, and then take action. It's important to think big, but it's important to think small and take action. I think that it's great to have a 5-year plan, but with ChatGPT and AI and disruption in the government and the dollar and all these things that are inside and outside our control, I don't think a 5-year plan is reasonable. That's my take. I think it's important to have one, but you need to reevaluate it every year because those goalposts are going to change because there's so much other forces that are disrupting it. So I say a really good, solid 1 year to 3 year plan, but with a bigger vision would be important. I think as far as the levels of franchise brands that grow, there's that sweet spot, 20 units or 25 units, 50 units. 100 seems to be a breakthrough level. If they can make it to 100 units, the business model changes and the scalability changes. So 100 is like a sweet spot. Below 100 and above 100 are kind of two things. And then from 100, I'd say it goes to 500 units. And then from 500 to 1,000. And then from 1,000, it's the sky's the limit. I mean, I've got franchise brands I work with that have 45,000 franchise locations across the globe. But you've got it, like you said, you've got to get to 20. The dynamics it's like building any business. The dynamics of a $1 million company are different than the dynamics of a $20 million company. Just the technology, the tech stack, the flow, the competition. I mean, there's a lot of variables. So regardless if you're a franchisor and you're listening to this, it's the same thing as a franchisee. You just have to look scalable. What do I want the user experience to be like? And you also have to be thinking about the trends that are happening in the industry. What types of things are going to be disruptive? And a reason I bring up artificial intelligence and machine learning and large language models is because it's affecting every business. I've been using AI and these services for a couple of years. Most recently, of course, when ChatGPT came out 4 months ago, it took them a month, I think, to get to 100 million users, and everybody's using it at some level. The last statistic I saw was 42% of all businesses using it have already made employee changes. So it's going to change the dynamics of business. And so you have to ask yourself, anything that can be automated is going to get done by a machine. And so then you have to ask yourself, well, if I have a franchise, what's the customer experience going to be like? It's going to make the importance of delivering customer experience great. Like, I'll tell you an example. I was working with a company. I don't want to say who it is because someday they might hire me and I don't want to lose that opportunity. But I was having trouble with their website, and it was a software as a service website. So I tried to log in. I was trying to get a file uploaded to their system, and it didn't work. I read the help screens. It didn't work. I went to YouTube, couldn't find it. Then I tried to call their phone number. You couldn't get through. Their chat didn't work. Then I logged into the support system, and that didn't work. And so after all this time, I'm like, all right, this is a terrible customer experience. They're obviously a big company. Well, I have AI tools that can go online, and I could type your name in, Trevor Emerson, and I can find out exactly who you live, what your past history is. I mean, it's crazy what's available online. Well, I typed in, give me the top 10 executives at this company. and I got all their emails. And then I sent them all an email last night at 9:30. I said, I just want to let you know what this customer experience is like. I have this need that's going to make you this much money, but now I'm going to have to go and take my money to someone else. And I just think as executives, you should know that you're losing a customer that's potentially worth 6 or 7 figures, but I can't get any support. And I just thought you should know before you lose the business. And I CC'd the CEO, the CTO, the CMO, the EIEIO, hooked on phonics. Like I did everybody. I put everybody on this list. And I did apologize. I said, look, I'm so sorry to have to email all these executives, but I'm just trying to take care of my customers, and you're preventing it. So you need to know this before I leave, and then before I use it in my next episode of my podcast, because I talk about business growth. I sent that at 9:30. I was at the office late, Central Time. I was driving home. Before I even got home, my phone rang, and it was the CTO, the Chief Technology Officer. And he said, hey, I got your email. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have one of my techs call you. Right about then, the caller ID came in. It was someone else, his tech. And he got me on the phone, and we fixed it. Now, why did I tell you that story? They cared enough to do something about it. They easily could have just said, we don't care, because they're a big company. I mean, if I told you who it is, they're big. Now, someone might say, well, what a jerk, Ford. You CC'd. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, I take no for an answer. I'm not going to do anything against anybody, but if I was that CEO, I'd want to know. I'd want to know if there's something wrong. So I think the lessons here are multiple. One, regardless of what level or role you have in the business, you have to have the give a poop factor, and you have to have that you care, take responsibility, acknowledge the problem, take action to fix the problem, because this is another long road, Katie and Trevor, to the tiny house. The outcome is, because they took care of me, they'll probably have me for life. And so it's the long-term value. I mean, the four success questions, and I know I'm probably running late on your episode, but too bad, you're going to have a longer episode. I would tell you the 4 questions you need to ask yourself are, what does it cost me to reach my leads? What is my conversion percentage on the first offer? What's my profit on the first sale? And what's the long-term value? So let's just use this podcast for an episode. So this is the first time you and I have met, where you've invited me on FranchisOR Bust. I'm glad to be on the show. I want to deliver great value. I want to add value to your listeners and viewers. But then people are smart. If they think I did a good job, they can go on Amazon and get my Accelerate book. Or maybe they'll go to LinkedIn and they'll connect with me. Or maybe they'll call me and say, hey, I heard you on this podcast. Can you do training for my team? Or I'd like to have you open our keynote for our conference. So I'm putting myself out there. Yeah, I'm spending my time, 30 minutes of my time, whatever it is, but it's about delivering value. So if you don't have the customers you want, ask yourself, what are you doing to reach your target market? Well, I speak on franchising. It makes sense that I would be on a podcast that's FranchisOR Bust, right? It just makes sense, and we don't always have to agree. Your listeners don't have to agree. It's not about my way or the highway, but it's about having that conversation and fishing where the fish are. I'm not on a nursing podcast. I'm not on a fishing podcast. I'm on a podcast that's relevant, that reaches either people interested or already in franchising as a franchisee or a single or multi-unit owner, maybe an area developer, or maybe a vendor or a franchise brand.
So much more we could be talking about.
I want to dump it all out there. That way, if you need a guest, you can just call me and go, hey, my guest didn't show up. Are you available? And I'll jump on the call.
I think Long Road to a Tiny House is on Katie's new album. That's her, one of the songs.
I hear myself talking. I'm like, crap, couldn't I have said that simpler?
Ford, so just like the big Ford F-250 that I drive, you can't get better on the road. And I don't think you can get better in the world of franchise and understanding the things that you've been talking about today, because it's been super, super insightful and helpful. And man, we appreciate it. And one more time, Accelerate is the name of the book, but give me the full title again so people can go get it.
It's on Amazon. It's an orange book cover, and it's Accelerate, the ultimate guide for franchisees to maximize local marketing and boost your sales. And my name, if you're listening to this in your car as you're driving, it's Saeks, Saeks, like Ford, like the car. Yes, I know. And last name is Saeks, Saeks. But yeah, you can check me out on Google. And you can check me out on YouTube or any social media, TikTok, you name it. You'll find me. I love anything having to do with franchise. And I will say this as you get ready to wrap up your show. If there's anything I would do as last advice, if you said, okay, Ford, what's one more bit of advice? It'd be this. Be careful of people who think they know everything and don't know what they don't know and don't know they know it. The more I learn, the more I realize there's so much I don't know. So if you're around a bunch of people who think they know everything, you probably need to get some new friends, because chances are they're not open to the ideas. And what I like about podcasts and shows like yours, Trevor, is you want people to be critical thinkers. It's not much about agreeing with us. It's about challenging your thinking. So if you have a belief that isn't serving you, it's time to get some new beliefs.
Couldn't agree more. Awesome stuff, Ford. We really appreciate you. Again, get out there, folks. Get the book. You heard, I would say you just barely scratched the surface of what Ford can teach you and what we can all learn together about the world of franchising and how to be successful. Because really, the point of this show, the point of our discussion today, the point of really getting into this world in the first place is, how do you make your life better? How are you going to grow? How are you going to do something that's going to matter to you? And we've got a lot of great advice today. So Ford,
thank you.
Our pleasure. Thank you, my friend.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys. We will see you on the next FranchisOR Bust, and check out that new single coming out soon on Katie's new album, Long Road to a Tiny House. All right. Thanks, everybody.